The flash from the photographer's camera blinded me for a second. I stood 3 feet behind my boss, Bob, watching him shake hands with the client representative from Genesis Industries. This settlement never would have happened without Bob's brilliant strategy, the CEO said, beaming. My stomach twisted. I'd spent 9 months on this case, late nights reviewing medical records, weekends drafting motions, endless calls with expert witnesses. Bob had shown up to exactly 2 meetings. The $15 million settlement I'd negotiated was being celebrated like it was his masterpiece. He turned to the cameras and said, "My team did excellent support work." Support work. I felt my face go hot. I smiled anyway because 15 people were watching, and I refused to look weak in front of the firm's partners. The photographer asked Bob to hold up the settlement agreement. My name wasn't anywhere on the press release. I made a decision right there, standing in my uncomfortable heels with my forced smile. If he could erase me this easily, I could make sure everyone knew the truth. I just needed the right moment, and I needed proof. I walked back to my office, hands shaking. My desk was buried under case files, deposition transcripts, and medical charts I'd analyzed line by line. Every sticky note in my handwriting, every highlighted sentence mine. I opened my laptop and pulled up the case folder. Dozens of documents, all time-stamped with my edits. I scrolled through emails, looking for something specific. Then I found it. An email thread from 3 weeks ago. Bob had forwarded my entire settlement strategy to himself, deleted my name from the draft, then sent it to the senior partners with the subject line, "My approach for Genesis." My heart pounded. I took a screenshot, saved it to a private folder, then created a backup on my personal cloud. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it yet, but I knew I needed insurance. My phone buzzed. A text from my colleague, Dottie. "Did you see the press release? Your name isn't even mentioned." I typed back, "I noticed." She responded immediately, "That's not right. We need to talk." I agreed to meet her after work. For the first time all day, I felt like I wasn't alone. Dottie met me at a coffee shop 2 blocks from the office. She slid into the booth across from me, her expression tight. "He's done this before," she said quietly. I blinked. "What do you mean?" She pulled out her phone and showed me an article from 2 years ago. Another major case. Another settlement. Bob's face front and center. "Simone handled that entire case," Dottie said. "She left the firm 6 months later." My chest tightened. "Did she ever say anything?" Dottie shook her head. "She couldn't. Bob made sure the narrative was locked in before she could object. He's good at controlling the story." I stirred my coffee, thinking, if he'd done this before, he'd do it again. And if I didn't stop him now, I'd be just another name erased from someone else's success. "I have emails," I said. Dottie leaned forward. "What kind of emails?" I told her about the forwarded strategy, the deleted authorship, the timestamps that proved I'd built the entire case. Her eyes lit up. "That's evidence, real evidence." I nodded. "But if I use it wrong, I'm the bitter associate who can't handle office politics." Dottie's jaw set. "Then we use it right." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the press conference in my head. Bob's smile, the client's praise, the way my own work had been repackaged as someone else's genius. I grabbed my laptop and opened the case files again. I started building a timeline. Every email I'd sent, every document I'd drafted, every call I'd logged with the client's legal team. The timestamps didn't lie. I'd been the primary contact for Genesis from day one. Bob had stepped in only during the final negotiation, the part everyone saw. I found another email that made my blood run cold. It was from Bob to the managing partner, sent the day after I'd presented my settlement strategy in our internal meeting. The subject line read, "Genesis Breakthrough." The body of the email described my exact approach, word for word, but framed as his idea. He'd even used my phrasing, leveraging the liability cap to maximize payout. I took another screenshot. Then I found something worse, a calendar invite Bob had created for a lunch meeting with the Genesis CEO, scheduled 2 days before the final settlement. The invite was marked private, but I'd been copied by mistake. He'd pitched himself as the lead strategist. My name wasn't mentioned. I called Dottie at 7 in the morning. "I found more," I said. "She told me to come over before work." I showed up at her apartment with my laptop and a folder full of printed emails. We spread everything across her kitchen table. "This is bigger than I thought," Dottie said, scanning the documents. "He didn't just take credit, he actively erased you." I nodded, feeling sick. She pointed to the calendar invite. "This is the smoking gun." He positioned himself as the architect before the settlement even closed. He planned this. We started organizing the evidence into categories. Original work product with my name, forwarded emails with my name removed, communications where Bob claimed credit, and financial records. That last one was Dottie's idea. "If he's stealing credit, he might be stealing money too," she said. I pulled up the billing records for Genesis. My time entries filled pages, over 800 hours billed. Bob's entries? Less than 50. But the press release called him the lead strategist. Dottie looked at me. "We need to decide how far you're willing to go." I met her eyes. "All the way." The next morning, I walked into the office early. The hallways were empty, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I logged into the firm's internal database and pulled up Bob's client communications. I wasn't supposed to have access to his files, but I'd been granted temporary permissions during the Genesis case. No one had revoked them. I scrolled through his sent folder, looking for anything related to the settlement. Then I found it, an email to the managing partner sent the morning of the press conference. The subject line, "Media Strategy for Genesis Announcement." The body outlined how Bob wanted the story framed. "Emphasize senior leadership and strategic vision. Keep junior team contributions general." Junior team. That was me. My hands trembled as I took screenshots. This wasn't just opportunism. This was calculated. He'd planned to cut me out from the beginning. I forwarded the email to my personal account, then deleted the sent notification. My phone buzzed. A meeting invite from Bob, Genesis debrief. I stared at the screen. He wanted to debrief me on my own case. I accepted the invite and added a note to myself. "Smile, listen, record everything." The debrief meeting felt like a performance. Bob sat at the head of the conference table, relaxed, smiling. "Great work on Genesis," he said. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. "You really supported the strategy well," he continued. "Your research was thorough." "Supported. Research." I bit the inside of my cheek. "I'm glad the settlement came together," I said carefully. Bob leaned back in his chair. The client was thrilled with my approach. "They've already asked about future cases." My approach, I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled. "That's great news." He went on for 10 minutes, describing the strategy as if he'd invented it. I took notes, nodding occasionally, while my phone recorded audio from my bag under the table. When he finished, he looked at me. "I'm thinking about taking you off client-facing work for a bit. You've been stretched thin. Let's get you back to research." My stomach dropped. He was sidelining me, removing me from the very clients I'd built relationships with. "I appreciate the concern," I said slowly, "but I'd prefer to stay on the front line." Bob's smile tightened. "We'll discuss it later." I left the room shaking. The recording was already uploading to my cloud. Dottie and I met again that night. I played her the recording. Her face went pale. "He's not just stealing credit," she said. "He's trying to bury you." I nodded. "If I'm stuck doing research, I can't build my own cases. I'll be invisible." We sat in silence for a moment. Then Dottie said, "What if we go to the client?" I looked at her. "Genesis?" She nodded. "They think Bob's the genius behind their settlement. What if they knew the truth?" My heart raced. Going to the client was risky. If it backfired, I'd look like a troublemaker. But if it worked, we'd need proof they can't ignore, I said. Dottie pulled out her laptop. "Let's build a timeline. Every email you sent them, every call, every draft, show them who actually did the work." We worked until midnight, organizing everything into a clean, undeniable narrative. By the time we finished, the evidence was damning. I had done 90% of the work. Bob had done 10% and taken 100% of the credit. "When do we send it?" Dottie asked. I stared at the file. "Soon. But first, I need to make sure there's no way he can spin this." The next day, I requested a meeting with the firm's billing department. I told them I needed to review my time entries for a case audit. They gave me access to the full Genesis file. I printed everything, every hour I'd billed, every task I'd logged, every note I'd written. Then I compared it to Bob's entries. The difference was staggering. I'd billed over 800 hours. He'd billed 43. But the client had been charged as if Bob was the lead attorney, with his hourly rate applied to work I'd done. My stomach turned. This wasn't just credit theft, it was billing fraud. I made copies of everything and locked them in my desk drawer. Then I sent an encrypted email to Dottie. Found something bigger. We need to talk. She replied within minutes. My place, tonight. When I got there, I showed her the billing records. Her eyes went wide. If the client sees this, they'll lose their minds, she said. They've been paying for Bob's time when it was actually yours. I nodded. And if the managing partner sees this, Bob's done. Dottie looked at me seriously. Are you ready for this to explode? I took a deep breath. Yes, but I want the client to know first. They deserve the truth. I drafted an email to Genesis's general counsel. It took me 2 hours to get the tone right. Professional, factual, non-emotional. I attached the timeline Dottie and I had built, along with billing records and email evidence. The subject line was simple: clarification regarding Genesis settlement. I read it over 5 times before hovering my mouse over the send button. My hands were shaking. If I sent this, there was no going back. Bob would know I'd gone over his head. The firm might retaliate, but if I didn't send it, I'd spend the rest of my career watching other people take credit for my work. I thought about Simone, the attorney who'd left 2 years ago. I thought about every woman who'd been erased, every junior associate who'd been buried under someone else's ego. I clicked send. The email disappeared from my outbox. I closed my laptop and sat in the dark, heart pounding. My phone buzzed. A text from Dottie. Did you do it? I typed back yes. She responded immediately. Now we wait. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept checking my email, refreshing over and over. Nothing. At 3 a.m, I finally passed out from exhaustion. When I woke up at 6, I had 12 missed calls. The first call was from Bob. I didn't answer. The second was from the managing partner. I let it go to voicemail. The third was from Genesis's general counsel. That one I answered. We received your email, he said, his voice carefully neutral. My heart hammered. I wanted to make sure you had the full picture, I said. There was a long pause. We're reviewing the materials you sent. This is concerning. I swallowed. I understand. He cleared his throat. We'll be in touch. Please don't discuss this with anyone at your firm until we've completed our review. He hung up. I sat frozen, staring at my phone. Dottie called next. What's happening? She asked. I told her about the call. They're reviewing it. They told me not to talk to anyone at the firm. Dottie exhaled. That means they're taking it seriously. I hoped she was right. An hour later, I got another call. This time from the managing partner's assistant. Bob is requesting an emergency meeting with you and leadership. Can you come in at noon? My stomach flipped. Yes, I said. I'll be there. I hung up and texted Dottie. It's happening. She replied, bring everything. Don't let them twist this. I printed a second copy of all my evidence and put it in my bag. Then I got dressed, hands shaking, and headed to the office. The conference room was silent when I walked in. Bob sat on one side of the table, his jaw tight. The managing partner, Douglas, sat at the head. 2 other senior partners flanked him. I took a seat across from Bob and set my folder on the table. Douglas spoke first. We've received a complaint from Genesis's general counsel. They're questioning the billing structure and the representation of leadership on their case. Bob jumped in immediately. This is a misunderstanding. I was the senior attorney on the case. Of course, my oversight was billed accordingly. I stayed quiet. Douglas looked at me. What's your response? I opened my folder and slid the billing records across the table. I billed 806 hours on Genesis. Bob billed 43. But the client was charged as if Bob was the lead strategist. One of the senior partners, a woman named Fiona, picked up the document. Her eyes narrowed. This is accurate? I nodded. It's directly from our billing system. Bob's face went red. She's twisting this. I provided strategic oversight. That's what senior attorneys do. I pulled out the email where he'd forwarded my strategy and removed my name. This is the settlement approach I drafted. Bob forwarded it to the partners as his own idea. I slid it across the table. The room went quiet. Douglas read it, his expression unreadable. Then he looked at Bob. Did you write this strategy? Bob hesitated. We collaborated. I shook my head. No, I wrote it. Alone. Fiona leaned forward. If this is true, we have a serious problem. The client believes Bob was the architect of their settlement. I pulled out the press release. They believe it because that's what we told them. Douglas rubbed his temples. Genesis is reviewing everything. If they find discrepancies, we could lose the account. Bob slammed his hand on the table. This is absurd. She's a junior associate trying to make a name for herself by tearing me down. I stayed calm. I'm not tearing anyone down. I'm providing facts. Douglas looked at me. Do you have anything else? I pulled out the recording from the debrief meeting. Bob told me he wanted to take me off client-facing work after I did 90% of the work on Genesis. I have it recorded. Bob's face went white. You recorded me? I met his eyes. Yes. The room fell silent. Fiona exchanged a glance with Douglas. We need to pause this meeting, she said. We'll reconvene after we've reviewed everything. Bob stood abruptly. This is a witch hunt. Douglas held up a hand. Sit down, Bob. He didn't. He grabbed his phone and stormed out. I stayed seated, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Fiona looked at me. You understand this changes everything. I nodded. I know. I left the meeting and went straight to my office. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I'd just accused a senior partner of fraud and credit theft in front of firm leadership. There was no coming back from this. Either I'd be vindicated or I'd be blacklisted. Dottie knocked on my door 10 minutes later. I heard, she said quietly. Everyone's talking. I dropped my head into my hands. I don't know what's going to happen. She sat down across from me. You did the right thing. That's what matters. My phone buzzed. An email from Genesis's general counsel. We've completed our preliminary review. We'd like to schedule a call with you and firm leadership tomorrow at 9 a.m. My stomach twisted. They want a call, I told Dottie. She nodded. That's good. They're not walking away yet. I wasn't sure if that was good or terrifying. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the meeting, Bob's face, the way Douglas had looked at the evidence. At 2 in the morning, I got another email, this one from Douglas. The subject line, Genesis call preparation. The body was brief. Please be available at 8:30 tomorrow for a pre-call briefing. Bring all documentation. I stared at the screen. They were taking this seriously. The question was whether they'd protect Bob or the truth. The briefing the next morning was tense. Douglas, Fiona, and another senior partner named Keith sat across from me. Bob wasn't there. Genesis is extremely concerned, Douglas began. They've asked for a full accounting of who did what on their case. I nodded. I have everything documented. Fiona leaned forward. They specifically asked about you. They want to know why your role wasn't disclosed. My throat tightened. Because Bob removed my name from client communications and press materials. Keith frowned. That's a serious allegation. I pulled out the email evidence again. It's not an allegation. It's documented. Douglas sighed. If Genesis pulls their account, this firm loses a major client. We need to control the narrative. I felt a chill. Control it how? Fiona spoke carefully. We need to present a united front. Acknowledge the oversight, commit to transparency moving forward. I stared at her. You want me to pretend this was an accident? Keith shook his head. We want you to help us save the relationship. I looked at each of them. I'll tell them the truth. What you do with that is up to you. The call started at 9. I sat in the corner of the conference room while Douglas dialed in. Genesis's general counsel, Zane, answered immediately. Let's get to the point, he said. We need to know who actually handled our case. Douglas started with a carefully worded introduction, emphasizing the firm's commitment to transparency. Zane cut him off. I don't need corporate speak. I need facts. There was a pause. Then Douglas said, The associate you're asking about is on the call. I'll let her explain. My heart raced. He just put me on the spot. I took a breath. My name is Jordan. I was the primary attorney on your case. I handled initial client intake, discovery, expert coordination, motion drafting, and settlement negotiations. Bob provided supervisory oversight. Zane was quiet for a moment. Supervisory oversight. His tone was flat. Yes, I said. That means he didn't do the work. It wasn't a question. I hesitated. He reviewed my work and attended key meetings. Zane exhaled sharply. We were told Bob was the lead strategist, that he developed the settlement approach. I looked at Douglas. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I developed the settlement strategy, I said quietly. Bob presented it to you. The line went silent. Then Zane said, "Send me a full breakdown of time entries, work product, and communications. I want to see who did what, hour by hour." Douglas jumped in. "Of course, we'll have that to you by end of day." Zane's voice was ice. "Good, because right now it looks like we paid for one attorney and got another." He hung up. The room was silent. Fiona looked at me. "You just tanked Bob's reputation." I met her gaze. "No, he did that himself." By noon, the office was buzzing. Word had spread that Genesis was furious. Bob hadn't shown up to work. I stayed in my office, trying to focus on other cases, but my phone kept lighting up with texts from colleagues. Most were supportive. A few were hostile, people loyal to Bob who thought I'd betrayed the firm. Dottie stopped by at lunch. "You okay?" she asked. I shrugged. "I don't know." She handed me a sandwich. "Eat, you need energy for whatever happens next." I picked at the bread, my stomach too knotted to eat. An hour later, Douglas called me into his office. "Genesis wants to meet with you," he said. "Just you." My heart skipped. "Why?" Douglas looked uncomfortable. "They want to hear your side directly, without firm interference." I nodded slowly. "When?" He handed me a printed calendar invite. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., their office." I left his office in a daze. Dottie was waiting in the hallway. "They want to meet with me," I told her. "Alone?" Her eyes widened. "That's huge. They're choosing you over the firm." I wasn't sure if that was good or terrifying. That night, I prepared for the meeting like it was trial prep. I reviewed every document, every email, every call log. I practiced explaining the timeline without sounding bitter or defensive. By midnight, I felt as ready as I'd ever be. I just hoped it was enough. Genesis's office was sleek and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Zane met me in the lobby, his expression unreadable. "Thank you for coming," he said. He led me to a small conference room where two other people waited. The CEO I'd seen at the press conference and another woman I didn't recognize. "This is our head of litigation, Maya," Zane said. I shook her hand, trying to keep mine from trembling. We sat down, and Zane got straight to it. "We reviewed the materials you sent, the time entries, the emails, the work product. It's clear you handled the majority of our case." I nodded. "Yes." Maya leaned forward. "Why didn't you speak up sooner?" I took a breath. "I tried." Bob controlled the narrative. By the time the press conference happened, the story was already set. The CEO spoke for the first time. "We look like fools. We praised the wrong person in front of cameras." I stayed quiet. Zane tapped the table. "Here's where we are. We trusted your firm. That trust is broken, but we still need legal support." He looked at me. "We want you to continue as our counsel, not the firm. You." My stomach flipped. "I'm still employed by the firm," I said carefully. Maya nodded. We're aware. We're requesting the firm assign you as primary counsel on all our matters. Bob is removed entirely." I blinked. "You want me to replace him?" Zane's expression was firm. "Yes. Can you do that?" I met his eyes. "Yes, I can." I left Genesis's office feeling like I was floating. They'd chosen me, not the firm. Not Bob. Me. I called Dottie from the car. "They want me as primary counsel," I said, still in shock. She screamed so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "Are you serious?" I laughed, the sound shaky. "Completely serious." When I got back to the office, Douglas was waiting in my doorway. "I heard," he said. His tone was neutral, but his eyes were sharp. "They called me right after you left. They're making your assignment a condition of keeping the account." I nodded. "That's what they said." Douglas stepped into my office and closed the door. "This puts us in a difficult position. Bob is a senior partner. You're a junior associate." I kept my voice steady. "I didn't ask them to choose me. They made that decision based on the work." He sighed. "I know, but this changes the firm's structure. We need to decide how to handle Bob." I waited. Douglas looked at me for a long moment. "We're calling an emergency partner meeting tonight. You'll need to present your case." My heart sank. "You want me to do this again?" He nodded. "If we're removing a senior partner, every partner needs to see the evidence." I felt exhausted just thinking about it, but I nodded. "Fine, I'll be there." Douglas left, and I collapsed into my chair. Dottie poked her head in. "What now?" I looked at her. "Now I convinced the entire partnership that Bob needs to go." The partner meeting started at 7. I walked into the large conference room to find 20 faces staring at me. Bob sat at the far end of the table, arms crossed. I took a seat at the opposite end and set down my folder. Douglas stood. We're here to address the situation with Genesis Industries. Jordan, please walk us through your evidence. I opened the folder and started from the beginning. The billing records, the email threads, the deleted authorship, the client communications. I kept my voice steady, factual. When I got to the recording of Bob saying he wanted to sideline me, several partners shifted uncomfortably. Bob interrupted. This is one-sided. She's painting herself as a victim to justify going behind my back. I looked at him. I went to the client because they deserved the truth. He leaned forward. You went to the client to undermine me. Fiona cut in. Bob, the evidence is clear. You took credit for work you didn't do. He slammed his hand on the table. I supervised her work. That's my job. Keith spoke up. Supervision doesn't mean authorship, and it doesn't justify misrepresenting the facts to the client. Bob's face was red. So you're taking her word over mine? Douglas looked around the table. We're taking the evidence, and the client's decision. They've made it clear. Jordan stays or they leave, which means we need to vote. Bob stood. This is insane. Douglas's voice was firm. Sit down, Bob. We're voting now. The vote was called. Each partner raised their hand in turn. I watched, barely breathing, as the count climbed. 15 votes to remove Bob from the Genesis account. 3 votes against, 2 abstentions. Douglas looked at Bob. The partnership has decided. You're removed from all Genesis matters, effective immediately. Bob's face went pale. You're letting a junior associate destroy my career? Fiona shook her head. You destroyed it yourself. Bob grabbed his briefcase and walked out without another word. The room was silent. Then Douglas looked at, Congratulations, you're now the lead attorney on Genesis. I nodded, feeling numb. Thank you. The partners filed out one by one. Some nodded at me. Others avoided eye contact. When the room was empty, Dottie slipped in. You did it, she said softly. I looked at the empty chair where Bob had been sitting. Yeah, I said. I did. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted. Dottie squeezed my shoulder. Come on, let's get out of here. We walked out together, into the cool night air, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. The fight wasn't over. But I'd won the first battle, and that was enough for now. The next morning, I walked into the office to find my desk covered in congratulatory notes. Some were genuine. Others felt performative, people covering themselves now that the power dynamic had shifted. I ignored them all and focused on the stack of files waiting for me. Genesis had 3 active matters that needed immediate attention. I dove in, grateful for the distraction. At 10, Douglas stopped by my office. The managing committee wants to formalize your new role. We're promoting you to senior associate, effective immediately. I looked up, surprised. That's fast. He smiled slightly. You earned it, and Genesis made it clear they expect you to have the authority to match your responsibility. I nodded. Thank you. He hesitated. Bob's officially leaving the firm. He submitted his resignation this morning. My chest tightened. I hadn't wanted to destroy him. I just wanted credit for my work. How's he taking it? I asked. Douglas's expression was grim. Not well, but that's not your concern anymore. He left, and I sat back in my chair, processing. Bob was gone. I was promoted. Genesis was mine. It should have felt like a victory. Instead, it felt like the end of something I hadn't wanted to lose. Dottie knocked on my door. I heard about the promotion. Congratulations. I smiled weakly. Thanks. She studied me. You okay? I nodded. Yeah, just processing. She sat down. You did the right thing. Remember that. Over the next few weeks, I rebuilt the Genesis relationship from the ground up. I met with Zane and Maya regularly, updating them on case progress and making sure they felt heard. Slowly, their trust returned. One afternoon, Zane called me into a meeting. We've been impressed with your work, he said. We'd like to expand our engagement with the firm. I blinked. Expand? Maya nodded. We're bringing you 3 new cases, but we want you leading all of them. My heart swelled. I'd be honored. Zane leaned back. You fought for the truth when it would have been easier to stay quiet. That's the kind of integrity we want in our council. I left the meeting feeling lighter than I had in months. When I got back to the office, I found an envelope on my desk. Inside was a handwritten note from Simone, the associate who'd left 2 years ago. I heard what you did. Thank you for fighting when I couldn't. You're braver than you know. I sat down, tears stinging my eyes. I'd thought this fight was just about me. But it was bigger than that. It was about every person who'd been erased, every junior associate who'd been told to stay quiet, every truth that had been buried for the sake of office politics. I wasn't done yet, but I'd started something, and that mattered. 6 months later, I stood in the same conference room where Bob had taken credit for my work. This time, I was the one at the front of the room, presenting a case strategy to the Genesis team. Zane listened intently, nodding as I walked through the plan. When I finished, he smiled. "This is excellent work, Jordan," I smiled back. "Thank you." After the meeting, I walked back to my office, newly renovated, with my name on the door. Dottie stopped by with coffee. "Look at you," she said, grinning. "Senior associate with your own office." I laughed. "It's surreal." She sat down. "You know what the best part is? You didn't just survive. You rebuilt." I thought about that. She was right. I hadn't just exposed the truth. I'd created something new, a reputation built on honesty, a client relationship built on trust, and a career built on work I could actually claim. My phone buzzed. A text from Zane. "Thanks for the presentation. Looking forward to continuing our work together." I showed Dottie. She raised her coffee cup. "To telling the truth." I clinked my cup against hers. To telling the truth. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been clean, but it had been worth it, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I sat at my desk, reviewing case notes for Genesis's newest matter. The office was quiet, the late afternoon sun streaming through my window. My phone buzzed with a message from a law school friend. "Saw your name on the Genesis press release. Congrats." I smiled. This time, my name was exactly where it belonged. I thought about the moment in that first press conference, standing invisible while someone else claimed my work. I thought about the fear I'd felt sending that email to Zane, not knowing if it would save my career or end it. I thought about Bob walking out of the partner meeting, his world collapsing because he'd built it on lies. The truth had cost him everything, but it had given me something I'd never had before. Proof that my voice mattered, that my work mattered, that I mattered. Dottie knocked on my door. "Heading out?" I nodded. "In a minute." She smiled. "Don't stay too late." I promised I wouldn't. After she left, I closed my laptop and looked around my office. My degrees on the wall, my name on the door, my cases on the shelf, all of it earned, all of it mine. I grabbed my coat and walked out, turning off the lights behind me. The fight had been brutal, but I'd won, not because I'd destroyed someone else, but because I'd refused to let someone destroy me. And that, I thought, was the only victory that mattered.